Hi, this is Walter Weesey with Yellowstone Country Fly Fishing. This is my weekly Montana Guide Flies video for the last couple days of January 2025. Can't actually remember the date, and pattern's going up tomorrow. But anyhow, what I'm doing today is a variation on a fly called a soda fountain parachute. This pattern was created by Dave Keltner, who's now a ranger in Yellowstone Park, has been a ranger all over the place. But I guided with him for a couple seasons early in my career, 23 years ago, which is kind of horrifying to say. And he created this pattern for the Lamar system. This matches both the full-size green drakes out there and then also the slightly smaller Dronella coloradensis or Dronella flavilinea. We're not really sure which. We always called them flavs. But anyhow, size 10 or 12, it's a full-size green drake. Size 14 or 16, it's a flav. And these also work actually down to size 20 as a blue-winged olive. And you'll notice here this pattern is not really all that green. That's actually one of the reasons this is one of two patterns I use to match that insect, because the commercial green drake patterns, these are western green drakes, are much, much greener than these bugs are. And whether that's a function of other places having greener insects or they're just wrong, I don't know. But I do know that this pattern also works up in British Columbia to match the drakes there. But anyway, this is one of the patterns I use. The other, it's kind of the more traditional one. The other one is a fly called a Furimsky's gray foam drake. You may be sensing a theme here. The bugs are grayer than most patterns for them. And so we wind up using gray drake patterns to match this bug a lot of the time, even though the bug is in fact a green drake. But anyhow, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to start tying. Alright, so my hook here is a standard dry fly hook, size 12. This one's a Montana Fly Company, number 7000. Now, there's a couple variations, or a couple changes I've made to this pattern compared to how Dave ties it. Number one, I'm using a Coq de Leon for the tail, and so this is medium Pardo Coq de Leon. And then Dave also splits the tail into two clumps. I splay the tail. So if you want to tie it as Dave tied it, you'd want to actually leave that tag end I just cut, and then you use the tag end of the thread to split the tails. But I find my version works just as well, and I actually just like splayed tails better than split tails. If the trout start counting tails, I think we're probably all in trouble. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to get a good clump of those CDL fibers here, and because I want a pretty robust tail on this fly. And I'll strip those off the stem there, and then you can probably see those kind of little short and curlies there. I'm going to trim those because I find that those kind of interfere with getting things tied in correctly and so on. If you leave those, it binds the tail fibers together. We're going to come in here, I'm going to measure that against the hook shank. I want about a full shank length of fibers, and I will lean towards the long side on those. And so I'm going to come in and then I'll arrange those here. This is a pattern where you definitely don't want to use shorter tail fibers than the shank is long. Anyway, I'm going to bind those down, and these came out actually pretty long, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm going to bind those down. I'm actually going to wrap down into the bend slightly, and you can see how that's kind of aiming slightly downhill there. But what I'm going to do is come behind that bundle with usually two turns of thread is enough. And it'll cock it up slightly for right now, but that'll wind up changing when I tie in the abdomen material. But you can kind of see how they're kind of cocked up a little bit, but then they're also splayed out to the side. And so that kind of gives me the same effect as a split tail, but I find it's easier. It creates a wider footprint as well, creates better flotation. So for the body on this fly, it's a gray olive turkey biot, and you can use the actual biots, which is this side. That's kind of the traditional way of doing it. I actually like using these short guys, or these skinny guys, on the other side of the feather. They're a little bit harder to work with in some respects because it's harder to tie them in so you know which side of the biot is going to show. And on this pattern, I do want the fuzzy side of the biot, the kind of the fuzzy edge of the biot to show. The flip side being, I actually don't necessarily care about that, and I'll show you, one way or the other what happens. If it comes in where the biot is kind of wrapping naturally, where the fuzzy side is showing, that's fine. and if it doesn't, I'll wrap it kind of in open spiral rather than a touching turns, and that's going to actually create more of a rib because the body thread here is going to actually show through, and so I'm okay with either of those. And now what I'm doing is just creating a tapered underbody on this pattern because it's a pretty big bug, and obviously the biot doesn't take up a whole lot of space. Obviously, the smaller the fly, the less I'm going to do this. You know, if I was tying an 18 for blueing olive, I wouldn't tie an underbody at all. And I finished there, kind of at my original tie-in point. I'm going to get my favorite fly tying material here, which is crazy glue, and apply a thin coat of that to the body. And then some people like to use hackle pliers on their biots. I don't. All right, so I'm going to start wrapping that, and I think, I'm trying to tell here. Yeah, okay. So this is going to start wrapping, and what's going to happen here is the fuzzy side of that biot is actually forward. And so as I go forward, I'm actually going to open my spiral just a little bit here so that those fuzzy edges are still showing. And that means that there's a little bit of a dark rib there too. Actually, the biot just twisted, I think. But anyhow, you can kind of see how I made that spiral a little more open for a couple turns there. That's fine. And you can kind of see how that creates a little bit more variety to the body. It's not just kind of monochrome. I'm entirely okay with that. And so, you know, the traditional way of wrapping a biot is, I can't even remember how to do it. You tie it in with a fuzzy edge either up or down, and that creates it so that it's always in the back. On this particular fly, I actually don't care about that, and honestly, this is one of the few patterns I tie that actually uses a biot body, and so I'll just open up my spiral if I need to make it make that fuzzy edge show. But anyway, there's a biot body. I'm going to advance my thread about midway to the eye there. And then my wing post, my parachute post on this fly is going to be Montana Fly Company Widow's Web and Smoke. And you can use any hydrophobic yarn for this, poly yarn. You know, I mean, this is poly yarn, it's just dyed, and that gives it the crinkle. But poly yarn, parapost wing, you know, it's all kind of the same stuff, EP fibers. But what I like to do is come in, I'm going to take just 2 or 3 turns here and try to make them tight, and if they're not tight, that's okay, because I'm going to glue this too. But I only take 2 to 3 turns there, and then I'll stand it up, and I'll take, again, 2 to 3 turns around the either end of that to kind of stand everything up. And I finish right in front of that kind of post that I'm creating. And that's when I tie in the hackle. I like to wrap the hackle and the post at the same time to avoid creating too much bulk. And what I'm doing here is stripping off my fibers of the hackle feather, and this is just a whiting, dark dun, you know, size 12. It's off of a 100 pack, but I always do measure if I use a 100 pack just to make sure they're actually the size, but this is. And you don't want to use an undersized hackle on this fly. You would actually want to use, if anything, a slightly large one. But what I like to do there is, you can see I'm actually taking a couple turns, 3 turns there onto that hackle stem on the hook shank. Then I'm going to stand that up on my side of that parachute post. And then I start taking turns around both the both the hackle and the parachute post. I find that tying the hackle in to the bare shank like that makes for a better tie-in. It doesn't come out as much. And that's always been the bane of my existence, tying it directly to the post. Tie the hackle directly to the post, and then it pops out when I start wrapping it. I'm going to wrap pretty far up that post because I want a lot of hackle on this fly. I actually will use this fly a little bit on the Yellowstone as well. And then for my own guiding nowadays, I don't guide the meadow sections of the Lamar system at all. I guide the rough stuff or some of the tributary creeks up there just to get away from the crowds. And so I need actually a little bit more robust of a hackle than you would think for those waters. But anyway, I've tied in that hackle kind of concave side facing the post on my side, and then I've got it here. Now is when I kind of give kind of an initial trim to that post. That's not done, but that's going to make it easier to tie and come in and whip finish and things like that. And you can kind of see now that post is not all that secure. So what I'm going to do is flip that over and then apply more super glue to the thread base there, especially the thread wrap securing the post to the hook shank, but also to the post itself. Now, once that dries, that will be secure, and I find that just taking a handful of thread wraps like that onto the, to initially secure the bundle to the hook shank, just creates less bulk, and that's why I do it. I use glue and fewer thread wraps rather than more thread wraps. All right, and then my thorax on this fly is going to be Adam's Gray frog hair dubbing, which is just a standard dry fly dub. You can use whatever gray dry fly dubbing you like, and I've always used a synthetic dubbing, like an acrylic type dubbing. If you like beaver or rabbit, by all means go ahead, muskrat. And just like kind of the rest of the flies, this is actually relatively robust, and so I'm going to go ahead and just start making wraps here. If you find yourself a little too far forward, as I did on that fly, I'll go back a little bit into the abdomen of the fly, and I'm going to wrap all the way up to the eye there, because I'm going to secure this hackle to the post. So I'm just kind of making wraps, and then I finish with a half turn. I'll do that again here just so you see it. My last turn, I come across and then make a half turn around that post, and so I finish, my thread is actually on the post right now. Then my hackle on this fly, I don't really count turns, I just kind of fill the post. So I'm going to make one, that's 1, 2, like I said, I don't even really count. And I'm just wrapping down the post, and I find that if you start getting some flyaways, like I'm starting to right now, you can kind of come down, and I had to angle the vise a little bit to see what I was doing there. But you see how I'm kind of going underneath those flyaways and then just kind of pulling them up like that. I find that that usually works to get things back in order. Alright, and so I stop here. I've got my hackle facing rearwards. I'm kind of holding that parallel to the hook shank. And I'm just going to make one turn around just the hackle. Maybe 2, but no more than that. And again, this is going to avoid creating bulk. I'm going to use my whip finish to finish securing that hackle. And so I'm not going to trim my hackle yet, because I've only got that one or at most 2 thread wraps holding that in place. So I'm going to come in, make my figure 4 here, and angle it up like this, and then whip finish directly to that post. And kind of doing the same thing with the thread as I did with those last couple hackle turns, where I'm trying to get underneath any of those flyaway fibers to kind of bind them back into the rest of the hackle. But your standard, 4 to 5 turn whip finish roughly. I may have done an extra one there because I was talking. And then really trying to keep that loop down below the fly just to keep it from binding in any more fibers. Pull it tight, and then I'll trim my thread actually before I trim my hackle. And then there we have it. As you can see, I don't think I have any flyaway fibers on that one. And that's how I secure all my parachutes. I don't tie parachutes all that often, but that's how I'm going to tie them off. And I find it makes it for a pretty clean tie-off point. And there we have it. That is Dave Keltner's soda fountain parachute. Tie these in sizes 10 through 16 for the Lamar system. 10s and 12s basically in July and a little bit in mid to late September. 14s and 16s late July until mid-September. And they work a little bit on the Yellowstone, work a little bit on the gibbon, but mostly for the Lamar system. And by all means, if your drakes are this color, if you're fishing up in southeastern British Columbia or something where the drakes that I've seen have been this color, go ahead and try the pattern there too. As always, thanks for watching, and if you find this video helpful, you catch some fish on this fly, do me a favor and click the Buy Me a Coffee link in the pattern description and throw me a buck or two. That makes it a lot more sensible to be doing these videos. And if you're looking for a guide in the Yellowstone region this upcoming season, we're in the full booking season, and I'm already starting to get booked out for kind of salmon fly season in late June, which I think, last few days of June this year. Give me a call at 406-223-8204 or find me at flyfishmontana.biz to go ahead and start setting up a trip. See you next week. And I'll momentarily jump back in. I did forget to trim that hackle post, and so if you notice, I trimmed down the hackle post in the 30 seconds since I stopped recording the rest of the video. So that's actually what you want it to look like. Leaving an inch-long hackle post, parachute post above the fly is probably not going to help the flotation. Anyway, see you next time.